Welcome to Directionally Correct, a People's podcast with Cole and Scott.
Today's guest, Nicholas Bremner.
Thanks to our sponsors, Worklytics. Generate actionable insights from work data while protecting your privacy using workplace analytics with our partners, Worklytics. Do you know who Robert Hogan is, like the Hogan Assessment?
Yeah.
So Hogan has a podcast, and they had him on as a guest talking about Carl Jung, and he was talking about how Jung's most famous finding was the collective unconscious. And I was saying earlier that basically LLMs are turning into an understanding of humanity as collective unconscious. But if you just parsed it down to like people who are living in like the mountains versus the Amazon versus different areas, you could probably find very different kind of traits about humanity just based on like geographies and stuff like that.
That's fascinating. And you get a sense of like what a society's gestalt is and how it's changing over time depending on like, when the data is being collected.
Yeah.
It's like a giant, filter of society. Like just everything gets collected and kind of spit back at you.
I think the one thing that's going to hold this back, though, obviously, is like the data collection and availability problem. Like you're talking about people in different regions. Some are more connected than others. There's going to be a bias towards data on, certain groups of people because we actually have data on that you can turn it on, right? Other groups you will have little to no data on. And so it won't be representative of the whole population necessarily.
Absolutely. Well, hey, do you want me to introduce you really quick, Nicholas?
Sure.
So Nicholas is an industrial organizational psychologist and people analytics practitioner with over 12 years of experience, currently leads people decision science at Uber, holds a master's in management science from Telfer School of Business. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
And at the University of Ottawa, and a PhD in biopsychology from Western University. You've published in peer-reviewed books and journals on leadership, followership, personality, and employee commitment. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about is, didn't you used to have a podcast?
Yeah, I did. I started a podcast with a friend of mine, Jose, close to, I think, right after I graduated.
What was it called?
Called Mind Your Work. Okay. And basically our thing was we would take peer-reviewed literature, we would do a mini lit review, and then we would summarize it because we were both very passionate about the scientist practitioner gap.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, translation is something we're very passionate about. Let's go and do that. So we did that podcast for I think about two years or so. It's been a little while since we've shut it down just because it is an immense amount of work to do a lit review and then cover the topic and
sounds
be
like
intelligent about it.
For every
Honestly,
episode,
it was. Yeah. So we just couldn't keep it up, honestly. But
oh my God.
It's so hard to stay up to date otherwise. I think this is a great mechanism that we have to marginally stay up to date with what's going on. We're not even as in depth as you could be in academia, clearly.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, right? It was great in the sense that it helped me continue reading scientific literature after I graduated and keep up to date on things. But eventually, once I had library access revoked, doing lit reviews became a little more difficult.
Well, we've talked about Google Scholar being the only place you can go. That basically becomes your only method at that point.
It is. Or you just search for that free PDF. You're okay, well I guess this is the study I'm going with.
Yeah.
How good is that feeling though?
Oh, it's wonderful.
You find the one free PDF of exactly what you're looking for. I'm like, this is divine.
Thank you, kind soul out there that made this available for free.
Well, here's a trick. I don't know if you guys have done this before, but if you do know an article is written by a famous professor or something like that, go look at their website and their Vita, and usually they have PDFs of all their articles, so you can find them there.
Yeah, a lot of the journals will give you access to spread amongst your own network, which I guess is what they're doing. They're putting it on their personal website, which is Google Scholar, this sort of thing.
What I've been doing lately is so I keep track of scientific literature through email push notifications and stuff through key journals, and a lot of it is not open access. I will just email the first author. I'll go to the university website and just email them.
Power move.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times they'll respond pretty quickly. I'll be like, I'm a practitioner. I'm interested in this because we're doing work in this space, and they're normally delighted to talk to someone in the field
You just
who's
made their
doing
day.
something. Exactly. And they're like, let's set up a call, let's chat about it. Like, it works out very well oftentimes.
Remember this paper you wrote 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, I need that access to it. I was talking to Amy Edmondson at a conference several years ago, and I was like...
Nice name drop.
Yeah, whatever. Well, check this out. This is even bigger. And I was like, this article you wrote on, psychological safety or whatever. And she's like, there's been so many. I forget.
Nice.
Which I was like, that's a power move.
Yeah, for sure. She's done a ton of stuff in the space, and I mean, she's a really good example of like a scientist practitioner who's really bridged that gap completely and has had a lot of success in both.
She became like TED Talk famous and
yeah,
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
What articles do you enjoy? Like, what do you gravitate towards?
What do I gravitate towards?
Like on the podcast or otherwise?
I mean, I've got pretty diverse interests in terms of like IO psych. I mean, these days I focus on stuff that is useful for my work. So I was very O-focused in my IO psychology career, and so touched a little bit on job analysis and training and selection, but I was mostly into like the employee engagement, leadership sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I gravitate towards articles like that. If there are new like theoretical models or things like that, I find those fascinating to read about.
It's shocking when you have a project based on, IO models, and you all of a sudden, like, you start reading a bunch of IO model literature.
It's wild, actually.
Yeah.
You get to apply it. Mm-hmm. Was that where the decision science part of your job comes in, or is that separate?
That's
or is that more like the
part of
evidence-based HR part?
I kind of see it all as fitting together. So, like, yes, to your question, one of the things, so I'll back up a little bit. Decision science, the way I kind of frame it at Uber, me and my team basically try and interact with leaders and other like functional partners. When they come to a point where they have to make a decision, we try and assemble like all the appropriate evidence to help them make the appropriate decision, right?
Okay.
First of all, it's about like confirming that something that they've identified as a problem is actually a problem in the first place. Because someone can say like, hey, we have an issue with, this training program, but it could be hearsay. And so like the first step is really confirming, first is making sure they're asking the right question, but then translating into, okay, is it a problem? And to figure out if something's actually a problem, it's about kind of weaving in, 4 different sources of evidence, like the scientific literature being one of them, where it's available. Sometimes there isn't stuff in the literature that's like applicable to the problem we have on hand, unfortunately, or it's too kind of like high in general. But then you've got like stakeholder concerns, so like talking to people in the organization, understanding them, organizational data. I sit in people analytics, so like that's our bread and butter. And then any professional expertise of myself, my team, and other people we talk to, and weaving all that together to basically help it to confirm like, is this a problem? And then make a decision, and then evaluate the decision you made. Was the right one? Was it not? It's generally the process that I think through.
Can I ask a dumb but hard question?
Yes, please.
How do you know when a decision is being made to need decision science?
That is a hard question.
It's a dumb question, but a hard one, I know.
Yeah. No, it's not a dumb question. It's a really good one. So the way I think about it, this is a kind of a false dichotomy because the decisions sit in between these, but like you have simple kind of routine decisions that you have to make repeatedly.
Like transactional decisions?
Yeah, exactly. Like the outcome's important, but it's fairly routine. It happens often. Like credit actuaries are really good at, producing models to help like decide, is this person, are they approved or are they not, right?
It's just like automated decisions at this point.
Exactly, yeah. And that's actually a big part of the field of decision science, is putting together risk models to make decisions at scale in a more automated fashion. Then you have the other category decisions, which is like novel, strategic, big decisions that require a lot of analysis and gathering evidence and things like that.
Yeah.
Typically, like that's our domain.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So you're not doing a bunch of like nudge-based decisions on a bunch of transactions that are occurring. You're just helping when like a big, I'm just throwing an example out there, like remote versus in-person kind of decision. That's a huge strategic decision. You're helping provide data and evidence on those type of decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Hubbard's book, How to Measure Anything?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's one of Scott's favorites.
It is. I talk about it every 4 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
But essentially he talks about what is the role of measurement, and it's reduction of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So you come into a situation, it's like, I don't know what to do, and like just because just the fact that you can reduce the uncertainty a little bit improves you greatly. Because before you had like no idea, should we go left or right? I don't know.
Yep.
But having a bit of measurement, you can put some parameters around it to improve the actual decision-making quality.
Yeah.
That's the whole goal there.
Isn't that a Hofstede's dimension too, like uncertainty reduction?
Hofstede dimension?
Yeah, like a cultural dimension. Remember the 8 cultural dimensions?
Oh, God. So you got like collectivistic versus independence and...
But I think like the ability to deal with uncertainty is like one of those.
I think it's like uncertainty avoidance or something.
Or uncertainty avoidance or something
yeah.
like that. I may be pulling that out of my butt, but...
Yeah, I mean, in HR, like, we have incomplete information.
Uncertainty avoidance.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. What's the definition of it?
Check out the big brain on Cole.
Yeah,
Look at this.
Association.
Got those big brains.
We got power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism / collectivism, masculinity, femininity, short versus long-term orientation, and then the Google little blurb ran out and I couldn't read anymore.
It's like pay more to read on. Nope, not happening.
Free PDF. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I forget the definition of uncertainty avoidance. I'd like the power distance, individualism, collectivism are pretty popular.
Sounds like there's overlap there, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does decision science mean? How does it differentiate itself from like regular people analytics?
It's a good question. So there's not a clear line, I would say. So I mean, when our team kind of took the form it does now,
the mantle.
The mantle.
It took the mantle of decision science.
Took the mantle. I was the first person in people analytics at Uber to take on that title. Inherited essentially from the alt model they created, and I think there was some work that I had to do to kind of research exactly like what that would look like and how to operationalize that within a people analytics team. Because we have other folks at Uber with decision science roles that are radically different from mine.
It's just a different application of the same science.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, using different statistical techniques. Obviously, the data is very different as well. Mm-hmm. But so when I took on the role, I thought about, okay, it's about helping people make better decisions. I thought about people analytics and organizations with my background in IOPsych and like what kinds of data do we have available.
Yeah. And
then I gravitated towards the evidence-based management framework that Rob Bremner really champions. There's a Center for Evidence-Based Management that champions it as well. And so did a lot of reading on that and tried to basically kind of take that model and apply it within.
Sorry, I'm just like a caveman. What is the evidence-based
it's
analytics model? Yeah.
So evidence-based practice originated, I believe, in medicine.
Yeah.
And so there's been a group, I think with a mixed series of backgrounds, some in economics, some in psychology, and others, who basically took that model and they wanted to apply it to management by saying, okay, if we're going to engage in certain management practices, we need evidence to support their efficacy.
Yeah.
And so how do we go about doing that, right? We want to continue making better decisions. And so this is a model that appealed to me. I kind of took it on, and it goes beyond organizational data. And I think like some people analytics teams in more nascent stages might start with reporting, might start just with data. Mm-hmm. But it's really about understanding that data, but then also what literature and external data we have available, in addition to the people who are actually using that data, because decisions are not made in a vacuum. They're made in a cultural context. And that cultural context is equally as important as the data itself.
It's like the Burke model, right? Where it's like you have like the internal factors and like it expands all the way out to the external environment that impacts everything.
Well, I think, because I've seen Rob Bremner stuff, and by the way, just to call out like another like top 5 hair guy, and like he's got fantastic hair. But this is a few years old, and remember we were talking earlier about like how I have like random things that stick in my brain. I remember this from a few years ago. He has like a pyramid or a hierarchy of like kinds of evidence, and those on the bottom are like bad, and you get better the higher you go in the hierarchy. And I remember the bottom of the hierarchy, which I thought was really interesting, is just people's opinions. And I was like, usually we disregard that as like non-evidence. But he's saying like, no, there is probably some truth in people's opinions.
Yeah.
It's just bad, and usually,
full
has
of
some bias, but there's still some truth in there. And I was like, okay, that's the bottom of the hierarchy, and you move up and you get to kind of like what you were saying about from the medical field of, this is where where you've gotten to like randomized controlled trials and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole kind of like evidence source of professional expertise, when you're untrained and you're inexperienced, it's just an opinion. But when you've seen a situation over and over again, and you've gotten feedback on the result, and it's a fairly kind of stable thing. Not every situation, not totally different. You actually start to form expertise around, like, I've seen this before. I anticipate it's going to work out the same way. And you develop sort of not an intuition, so to speak, but it's
I've got a nerdy question about this, and it's fine if you don't know the answer, because I'm basically asking as if you were like a person who researched this all the time, and maybe you do. Is there any like ironclad evidence-based management research, or is everything kind of lacking in one way or another?
Or context specific too.
Like, is there any like universal truths that we know are like, all right, this is always the case in management science?
I don't know.
It depends.
Honestly, like, it's the golden it depends. There's so many contingencies and so many boundary conditions that, I don't know. I think there's associations that apply broadly. Like, I mean, there's certain psychology findings that I find myself citing very
coming
frequently.
back to over and over again.
Yeah, like the whole distributive justice, procedural justice distinction, right? It's like,
as
long as the process is fair, even if you didn't get what you wanted, you're not going to be as unhappy, right?
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, even stuff like intent to stay is probably one of the best measures we have, like 0.5 correlations, depending on the person's ability and the external environment, this sort of thing. Even that is only 0.5 correlation, 25% of the total variance.
But it's still pretty good if you consider...
it's fantastic.
I mean, turnover, attrition, it happens for so many reasons. Some are uncontrollable by the organization, some are. And so it's a hard event to predict inherently.
I had a behavioral scientist I used to work with. We were producing this predictive attrition model, and I was telling her about this, intent to stay, and she found some study, and it really pissed me off. It did.
I like where this is going already.
Well, it's like someone took intent to stay items, and they factored in coworker relationships, your relationship with your manager, tenure, satisfaction, everything you could imagine. And at the end, after they controlled for all these variables, it's intent to stay didn't predict anything. She's like, see, look, it doesn't
those
matter.
Are all the factors.
Exactly. You took away everything why someone would leave. You took away all those factors, and all of a sudden you've got numbers on the page.
I mean, I guess what they're sort of proving is that all of those are highly correlated with one another. And
that is true.
Before you take out all the correlational variance, it's like nothing's left at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if your intent is to explain the most variance possible, then good job. But if your intent is to explain what's actually going on here and interpret it, then that's not going to work.
That's a great point. It's a cautionary tale for how much you actually control for in an organization, because you could control for a lot in your analyses and come up with ostensibly null findings.
Yeah. I did want to come back to something that I wanted to ask you. Do you have any advice for us about doing a podcast? We can learn from you,
good
wise
question.
one.
I mean,
what are we doing wrong?
Yeah. Well, don't start there.
Is that advice?
I'll tell you just what you're doing wrong.
Critique us.
Yeah. I can tell you something that you guys did right immediately. Don't do the editing yourself.
Well, we actually did do that.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was a later learning.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Jose did all the editing for Mind Your Work. It is an immense amount of work, as you guys know. Yeah. And so
we can thank Scott for that in the beginning. He did a lot of work, and he did good work.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott was
high
quality.
Yeah, everyone should praise me.
Yes, I do constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know what your experience is like with the format and having guests and everything. And
did you guys not have guests?
No, we didn't. It was so. This is one of the reasons why it was so labor intensive. Is that it was just the two of us. We would summarize the literature. We'd come up with a roadmap of different episodes, different things we wanted to talk about. Do the research, summarize it, and then we would come up with a kind of transcript or story around what we wanted to talk about, bring in personal examples and everything. So we were carrying the full load, essentially. We never had guests on.
And we'll come back to storytelling in a second, but I think you had a question for us about around the podcast or something.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm curious, how it's been, what are some of the kind of highs and lows, and balancing it with your work as well, and some
definitely haven't figured that out.
No,
that's still a challenge.
It does kind of take over our lives at times.
I think the way we set it up immediately makes it a lot easier, because it's just a conversational format.
Yeah,
it's just meant to be open conversation that you would have with any other IO.
When our name gave us a get out of jail free card
that's
on
true.
A lot of things.
What do you mean?
well, we're directionally correct. We're not correct.
We're not on the money.
Yeah, we're not on the money almost ever.
Yeah.
We're not mind your work. Yeah.
We set very high expectations for ourselves in terms of precision.
We've gone through. I mean, it's a good like microcosm for like an organization. We went through like kind of forming, norming, storming. We had a lot of disagreements.
Oh yeah.
Like that's kind of the things I don't even think the audience picked up on or knows about it all. Like we've gone through some real ringers before trying to figure out like what is this thing going to be, what's it not going to be, how do we stay true to ourselves, and that's really the hardest part because you get like scope creep.
Yeah, that is true.
And then you're just like, well, I thought we were just going to do this cool small thing, and now it's like become this big thing that's kind of like a lot of work. Like, well, how are we going to navigate that?
And we've had to like adjust our schedule too because it's
that makes sense.
I think now we're 4 weeks on and a week off. Yeah, something like that.
I think one time we went like 10 straight weeks.
It's like waves.
And I think we went to kill each other at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I love Scott. Like, I mean, we obviously have good rapport and everything, but it's like at the end of it, you're just like, this is not fun at the moment. But we always wanted to stay fun, and I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but I'm having fun with it. So
absolutely, and there's a lot of not to make this all about us or anything like that, but there's like reinforcing moments where like we're here at TALREOS, and like people know who Cole is, they know who I am, they talk about us.
Make fun of us.
You have a reputation.
Yeah, clearly. Definitely.
Or I'll just recount the story again. Like I was at PsyOp and someone stopped me in the hallway after PsyOp and is like, I live in Switzerland and my kids love you.
Really?
Yeah, they said, you talk about math in a fun way. And it's how they learn English too. It's like, holy moly. I mean, like how cool is that? I've never had a moment like that in my life.
Getting to learn a lot about English words for Texas and Buc-ee's and stuff like that. All the important things.
A couple curse words sprinkled in here, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. No, it's important for it to stay fun, to kind of drive you forward. You have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about, because I think this is related, the storytelling component. Doesn't that kind of make people analytics fun and meaningful? Is being able to tell a story with data? And I think you are kind of like one of those people out there I consider to be uniquely good at this. So can you talk a little bit about, I don't even know if there is there any kind of like method to your madness and how you do that?
I mean, so like first of all, stories are memorable, right? I mean, people remember stories more than they remember statistics because there's like an emotional connection. It's fun, it's interesting. And so I enjoy kind of crafting the stories, bringing in anecdotes, examples, things like that. But using data to kind of power those stories, it's incredible. Like the combination.
So like, how do you do that though? Like, how do you use data to power a story? Because I think that's the part where everybody goes, I know data, I know story, but I don't know how to make data do story.
Yeah. It's a really good question. So being on a people analytics team, one thing I always say is that unfortunately, as a team, like we are in a position where we often lack a lot of context. Unless you deliberately speak to people to get a sense of what's going on and get more context. It's not saying that we can't be aware of context and get great at that. It's just that our position doesn't necessarily set us up for success automatically, right? Yeah. We do have a unique superpower that we have a ton of data. We know the pros and like the limitations of that data as well. And so if you start with that framing and you speak to the right people, get a really good understanding of what their problem is, where they're coming from, what their motivations are, you're in a very good position to weave those two things together. Yeah. And it really starts with like understanding audience motivation. Thank you.
This is the best pod ever.
It's good, yeah.
Coming over waiters.
Getting offered drinks, offered food.
Well, I think that plagues a lot of people in X functions. You're removed from the business. You don't necessarily know what's going on, or in a lot of cases, how the business is making money.
Yeah.
But you are in charge of setting initiatives to change the org.
Yeah.
Well, would you say that linking the data to the story is like hunting for truffles, perhaps?
Hunting for truffles?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Because when you find that perfect connection, everything just lights up. I like how you wove the truffle stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about truffle hunting at all?
Yeah, sure, man. Okay, so Cole and I were talking before the podcast. This is funny because this is something that I haven't started doing yet, but I'm just like insanely passionate about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a few weeks, we're going to get a dog, my wife and I. It's a Lagotto Romagnolo. It's an Italian water dog. They're originally trained to retrieve fowl for hunting. Mm-hmm. They drained the marshes in Italy, and then they had to find a new job for the dog. So
why'd they drain the marshes?
I don't know.
That sounds sad.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Probably for farming, I think.
It's a tough time for everyone.
Cool.
Yeah. No, we don't. Nobody wants
drink?
marshes.
There's no more water.
Love that marsh water.
Sorry, we're going off on a way tangent here.
I also love that you import a dog from Italy. Like,
Yeah.
So the parents of the dog that we're getting are actually from Serbia. They're a moderately rare breed though, and so anyway, like he had all these unemployed Lagottos, and so they retrained them to hunt for truffles in the countryside in Italy.
Really?
Because they have a really, really good nose. They're very trainable. Technically, and they don't eat the truffles as well.
Yes.
Like, farmers would use pigs to hunt for truffles originally because pigs
are
unearth them.
vicious creatures when it comes to eating stuff.
They're
going to
hungry
eat those
species.
truffles fast.
Yeah, exactly. So Lagottos are good at it. Technically, you can train any dog to do it, but Lagottos are they pick it up well.
Okay.
So like, is there like a soil condition that promotes truffles, or like, are they where you live even? Or are you just like open to find them? Or?
So they're all over Northern California. They're
Really?
all over the Pacific Northwest. They're everywhere. The reason why they're so hard to find, though, is because they grow as like nodules on tree roots, anywhere between like a few inches beneath ground to like I think a few feet beneath ground, and so that's why they're hard to find. You need a dog or a pig, really good at knowing the scent, and then can dig and find them essentially. And so when I get this lovely puppy, I'm gonna train them to hunt.
How? Like I don't understand the process. Like I was able to train my dog to get beers from the fridge and like close the door and this sort of thing. But
It seems equally
That
hard.
seems
well, I mean, you're
impressive.
training a dog to find
Closing
something.
the door part's the hard part.
I'll show you a video.
Yeah, sure.
I'll show you a video. But like, how do you train a dog to find something under the ground to like give him like the scent of a truffle and be like, go find
exactly.
something like
That sounds like their
That's what you do.
fantasy. I get to dig under the ground.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do. They have different like training oils for dogs.
Oh,
You can
okay.
train them to like pick up the scent of specific species of truffles. As many as you want, I guess. There's lots of different species of truffles. And then they'll eventually like go out and find them for you.
Who was the first person like see a truffle and be like, I'm gonna eat that? You know, because
Apparently
like,
it was
they're ugly as hell.
I know. It was pigs who found them and ate them, and the farmers were like, oh, what did it find? And they're like, let me try.
This pig tastes good.
Yeah.
It tastes like truffles.
Delicious.
I do like truffle fries.
Absolutely,
truffle fries are
right?
It's like
fantastic.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, how'd you get into this? Like, what spurred this?
We wanted a dog, honestly, doing research, and I'm allergic to dogs. Lagottos are hypoallergenic.
Oh, nice.
And so then I started reading more about the breed, and I was like, oh my god, this sounds fascinating. I just have to start doing this. I love hiking, I love being outdoors, and like this just seemed like the perfect thing. So
I love the totally random hobbies here. This is great.
I have weird hobbies, yeah.
How many Waffle Houses have you been to?
How many Waffle Houses I've been to?
Yeah.
Do you even know what a Waffle House
Yeah,
is?
do they even have Waffle Houses where you live?
Do they have Waffle Houses in Canada? Not really, no. Wait, hold on. What's the definition of a Waffle House specifically? I think this proves
A
that I
Waffle
don't
House
know
is
what
a
it
restaurant.
I know it's a restaurant. Do they exclusively serve waffles and that's it?
They serve other
No,
stuff too. It's a very unsavory place.
Cole worked at the Waffle
Yeah.
House.
Oh yeah,
For a little bit.
The Waffle House.
Well, a Waffle House, not
Okay.
the Waffle House.
The greatest thing with the Waffle House is like, is it good? No.
Okay.
Like, is it clean? No. Like, is the waiters friendly? No. No.
So I'm waiting for the
Is it
good part.
great? It's awesome.
It's just it's a cultural experience.
It
sounds
is a
like.
cultural
Yeah.
experience.
Okay.
Very much so.
I don't think I've been to a Waffle House then. I don't know.
Well, would
if
you
I was
like
to go
to-
to one, where would you recommend I go?
Any of them. They're all the same.
They're all the same. They're all built exactly the same. The same people go into it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It might be the same old crotchety woman that works at every single one. She might have clones.
They just cloned her and employed her at every single one. Okay, I'm going to go.
Our version of the Waffle House is we are going to give you 2 options, and we never really go into this side, but the idea is to have one opinion and then try and find a way to balance it out eventually, kind of waffle on it.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm very good at waffling.
Okay, good.
Let's do it.
Good. Okay.
Sounds like the perfect decision scientist.
It's a Canadian trait.
Hey.
Yeah. Eh?
Oh, wait.
Uh-oh.
There we
Beautiful.
go.
Thank
We
you so
got
much.
drinks.
Thank you so much.
This is our first time drinking on the podcast.
Give a little cheers.
Cheers.
guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
L'chaim.
It's not great, guys.
All right. Well, you're getting us the high bar stuff. Yeah.
All right, Nicholas.
Okay.
This is for you to waffle on. Would you rather have a team of data scientists with no business acumen or a team of business analysts with no data science skills?
Too close to home, man. Oh, shoot.
That's all. I actually love this question.
That's called a Monday.
Okay, so
That's just called reality.
Yeah.
it depends. Okay, so personally, if I was to choose one or the other, like outside of context, I would love to have a team of data scientists because I have a little bit of skill in that space, but having a team that's way better than me at doing stuff that I can't do, so powerful. And I'd be happy to kind of like layer in the business context and coach and stuff like that. If I have like crazy demands on my team and the organization and we need to be able to scale to stakeholder needs, I can't put data scientists with no business acumen in front of stakeholders.
Yeah.
And so I'd much rather have a business analyst who has some, Excel savvy, some stat savvy, and knows how to communicate effectively to be able to kind of like take off some of that work, and we walk before we run. So, I mean, both are interesting realities.
You're waffling. I can feel it. Like,
What would you waffle on?
I think that you're on to something there. As far as like, you can teach a little business acumen or provide it.
Yeah.
But trying to teach the data science skills is a much bigger uphill climb. And at the same time, we shit on like Excel and this sort of thing, but you can do a lot in Excel.
You totally can, yeah.
You can do
As long
a lot.
as it's not repeatable, right?
Yeah.
That's our constant PSA. If you're doing repeatable work.
Yeah.
But I mean, like once again, like the whole goal of measurement and analysis is to reduce uncertainty, and even if you can just do that a little bit, you gain some advantage there.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I take the other side of it, just for waffly's sake?
Well, I mean, if you want to be that way,
waffle away.
One of the things that, and again, this might be just limited to my experience, but I find that people nowadays, at least in like the last 5 to 10 years, learning data science is considered really sexy.
Yep.
And so if you have business acumen...
That's what the ladies tell me.
It's not what they tell you.
Said no one ever.
And so I find that like actually having the business acumen is the most ideal thing because people are probably going to want to learn the data science anyway, whereas the data scientists may never want to learn the business acumen. Like, they just don't find it intellectually stimulating.
Well, with like generative AI now, like the data science element is
barriers
getting
to
like
entry.
really,
Yes, very
it's
much
getting
lowered.
You can just go and ask like, hey, how do I do this in Python? And if you have the business acumen, you know what the company's actually doing. You need some minor coding skills, but still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You need to know how to set up Python, which is
set up Python.
Just a pain in the ass. Trying to set up the right instance of Python, the right version. I find that was more difficult than actually learning how to write the code.
You're my spirit animal. You want to shit on Python real quick?
I mean, I can shit on the setup of it and how many, like getting the coding environment set up was the most difficult part, honestly. And then running the code and writing the code is a lot easier, I find.
I mean, just because we're talking about AI, generative AI, and the jobs being taken over, you want to talk about the jobs that are safe from?
Yeah. So what are the jobs that are the safest from generative AI? We have an article. It's called "The Jobs AI Won't Take." It's from the BBC, and it goes through a lot of different ups and downs. But essentially, it comes down to things that are like socially oriented in nature, like a nurse or like a social worker.
Yeah.
You've got kind of like the technical trade skills like a plumber, and then there's one more I'm forgetting, Scott.
Creativity.
Creativity.
Yeah.
So that's the one I took issue with because I think they're actually finding a lot of the generative AI is pretty good at creative tasks.
Yeah, they talked about it in a couple different ways.
Louder now.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to move?
And we're back. So jobs that artificial intelligence will not take. So creative jobs. I feel like actually what we're seeing with generative AI is it's actually doing a lot of creative things already. So I'm not sure that it won't replace some of the creative jobs. And I think you had a comment on that, Scott.
Yeah, so I think they're already seeing that like graphic designers or like these sort of folks, they're already being replaced by just absolutely. Have y'all looked at this? Like get like your photo taken and like a selfie and it'll change the images, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Like I think that's done. That's done.
Yeah.
Things like music are a little bit more intriguing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a rant about this. Like,
well, let's rant.
Okay, so in the 80s, like when MTV first came out, like the music was freaking fantastic, right?
Wait, is this a rant about MTV not playing music anymore?
No.
Okay.
However, that is a valid rant. But like, this is the first time we actually got to see the artists really in the and they were fucking ugly. They were ugly, and the music was great. And then slowly they were on TV more and more, and the music got worse and worse, and they got prettier and prettier.
Yeah.
To the point now where the music is kind of shit, and people are beautiful, and no one knows how to play an instrument anymore.
Except for Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran is still piss ugly.
He's not
but he has a beautiful voice.
But I think we're going to see, like, everyone wanted to be a DJ, like, 10 years ago now. Like, no one plays a guitar anymore. No one plays drums that I know of anyway. But I think we're going to see this more and more. Like, so, like, now you can have, like, a variety of beats or just tell generative AI, like, hey, create a song about, me on a mountaintop, whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to see an exponential growth in shitty music from this generative AI.
Maybe. I mean, maybe we'll see a new occupation like prompt musician, which is really good at coaxing the right tunes out of it.
Or you get like very specific, like songs tailored just to you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why all the DJs wear the mask over their head so they can still be ugly.
Oh, Dirty Mouse or whatever his name is.
Dead Mouse and Marshmallow.
Great Canadian artist. Come on, guys.
Oh, is he Canadian?
He's Canadian, yeah. He's from Toronto.
Is he?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers to Dead Mouse.
Canada.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Are you a Senators fan?
No, I'm not a Sens fan. I'm not much of a hockey guy.
Really?
Maple Leafs? Is that a thing?
It's dangerous to be a Leafs fan, apparently.
I didn't know that.
They haven't won like
I don't know anything about
years.
They don't win very much.
Yeah. I don't think the Stars do either. But
well,
I only know when they're good because all of a sudden all the green comes out around Dallas. I'm like, I guess the Stars are good.
I remember the Stars. I used to play NHL 95 as a kid.
Hell yeah.
That's the last time I remember playing as the Dallas Stars.
I remember playing NFL 95.
Oh, yeah?
Those are like the best.
Great games.
Yeah. Sega Genesis.
They've released one every year
since. Guys?
Sega Genesis, man.
Nice.
I remember when the N64 came out, and I was like, this is just mind-blowing.
Legendary, yeah. Everything's in 3D. Super Mario 64. It's crazy.
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
Lost some relationships due to GoldenEye.
Have you gone back and played GoldenEye?
GoldenEye holds up.
It does not hold up. The controls are the worst. They're frustratingly clunky. It makes me really appreciate the current state of games.
It was transformative because it was the first-person shooter game, right? Yeah. And that's why people were addicted to it.
The first multiplayer
Call of Duty owes
one,
GoldenEye so much.
Oh, totally. All of those.
Yeah.
I remember I played NHL 98, like it was going out of style, and like I was like, man, the graphics will never get better. And like 2000.
Oh, how wrong you were.
Yeah. 2003, like I had a friend that had a PS2 at the time, and I was like, I got this PS1 game. It'll play on your thing. Here, you can have it. Like, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And like he loaded it up. It's like everyone's like a triangle and a block, and I was like, oh my god, this is horrible.
Yeah, that's not good at all. Do you want to do some harder science for a second?
Yeah, sure. What are you gonna go for?
So there's a new, I think it's a new article from Kyle Bradley and one of my personal favorites, Herman McGinnis.
Herman McGinnis is one of the most prolific researchers.
Dude is a machine.
Yeah.
He is an absolute machine. So this is in organizational science. The article is called Team Performance, Nature and Antecedents of Non-Normal Distributions. And so I'll just do kind of a quick synopsis of it. Whereas a few years ago, and Scott and I have talked about it on the podcast many times, O'Boyle and McGinnis about, individual performance is they actually found it's not normally distributed. It goes according to a power law. Mm-hmm. Well, they've continued that line of research to team performance. And so the article says, team research typically assumes that team performance is normally distributed. Teams cluster around average performance. Performance variability is not substantial, and a few teams inhabit the upper range of the distribution. However, what they found is within, I think it's 73% of teams, that actually a non-normal power distribution fits the model better than, I think 11% actually fit a normal distribution.
Yeah, only 11% actually fit a normal distribution.
So again, I feel like this is, turning the table over on a lot of historical psychological literature on teams, just like the McGinnis and O'Boyle did for individual performance. What are your all thoughts on this?
I had a chance to kind of skim this with the plan over here. One of the things I noticed is that their sample skews pretty sports heavy.
Yeah.
They looked at a lot of sports teams.
Which is also a criticism of the original article as well.
Right. And it's not all sports teams. So,
yeah.
That's one thing. But I mean, if I think about like applying this to an organization, and you guys probably know way more about sports than I do, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but if a team doesn't do super well year over year, I mean, they stay around, right? But in an organization,
they get fired often.
They get like the team as a whole.
Or they
don't get disbanded though.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. They don't get disbanded.
Well, I mean, you could be like relegated in other leagues,
like European soccer or something like that.
Okay, so you can drop down a league.
Not in America.
Not in America.
Okay. So my thought was that in organizations, if you're actively performance managing low performing teams out, that's going to essentially boost your mean performance, right? And so those exceptional teams are going to be slightly less exceptional in the total distribution.
How often is a whole team at work even fired? Usually it's just the underperforming members of the team.
If you look at performance of individuals in the organization, right? You performance manage on individuals, your mean level of performance is going to basically go up after you remove the outliers in the bottom of the distribution, right? And so, I mean, I was just thinking like, I think it depends on like the kind of work being done, depends on the setting. And I know they have a few kind of like moderating and boundary conditions they look at there too, but it's an interesting article.
It is interesting. So they identified 200,000 teams and 500,000 employees. So that's if each person is only represented once, that's 3-person teams, which isn't really reasonable. And they have sports teams, firefighters, politics, all sorts of stuff. Floor effects is a thing too, because like you can even in an organization, like a team could start and like their whole project just blows up. Yeah. Right. Like nothing happens, or like I've been on these sort of teams too. It's like, we have a great idea. And you go through like a meeting. It's like, okay, it's a planning meeting. Yeah. And you go to another meeting. It's like, it's a planning meeting. A third one. And after a while, you're like, fuck this. Like, I'm not even going to attend these anymore. Like, what are we doing? Like 10 meetings later, like just nothing happens. It all kind of goes away. Have y'all ever done any sort of teams research?
Not really, no.
Nope, not personally.
I've done a bit. And like the first question that I have is like, what is a team? Especially an organization.
Yes.
It's like, you get these like, that's the head scratcher that everyone first comes up to, because they always have these like great ideas on how to like measure it and this sort of stuff. It's like, okay, so we talking about everyone reports to a manager?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember we talked about this with Rob Cross, because I actually had done a little bit of team research, but I was talking about, it was like 50-person teams. And you're like, whoa, what's a team? You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to have, I can't remember the actual like IO definition, but it's like interdependence. Mm-hmm. So like a 50-person team, you have essentially clusters of people, which are like a sports team. Like even like a football team, like 11 people on defense. That's still a lot. You're not really interacting with like the linemen, or not necessarily interacting with the defenders or DBs.
You have a shared goal, but you're not direct. Well, you're partially independent on each other.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it that way, then like all of Johnson and Johnson is a team.
Yeah,
you know, we have a shared goal. You would hope.
Yeah,
presumably. Yeah.
Do y'all tend to occupy like the same role across teams? Like I know I'm Matrix. I'm on like 8 different projects right now. I got 8 different teams.
Do you mean like between organizations that we've worked at, or do you mean like
like say like just do you naturally rise to be like the leader of the team, or like the
leader emergence,
the glue of the team, or anything like this?
Never been criticized or called out for being the glue. Not even once.
You are the fault line.
Yeah. You're either with me or against me. I'm kidding, obviously.
I think it depends on how passionate I am about the project. If I really care about it, then I'll pull things together. But if I'm not, then I don't know. I'm on so many projects that it's hard to be like super gung ho about literally everything. But yeah,
I think I could aptly say normally, unless I'm the cheerleader, which I am capable of, I'm the contrarian. It's usually
I can see
I'm
that.
usually
You're
the
the one trying
contrarian.
to actively destroy the team.
No, it's just trying, like, everybody needs a red team. Everybody needs a sounding board. Everybody needs somebody to, like, you know, challenge the ideas to make them stronger. I think I played that role pretty well.
You're the resident devil's advocate.
Yeah, devil's advocate.
Like being on like a really great team is like it's almost like when like you hit a baseball like cleanly with a bat. Like it's not even like you did anything, you know?
Oh yeah, you like swing softly and it just goes for miles.
Oh yeah, it's like you didn't even like hit anything. It's sort of magic that obviously we're all trying to.
What role do you play?
Are
you the glue guy?
I think so. Like I won't necessarily be the one that coordinates communications or this sort of thing, but like team harmony is probably part of my role anyway.
Everybody gets along.
Everyone gets along, but it's more than that. It's more than just being like a.
Is it a positivity thing?
What's up?
Is it like positivity, like bringing positivity to the team?
Like Rob Cross talks about like energizer relationships. I don't think I'm necessarily that. I got this like I want to figure.
You're
out
a low key energizer. You're not like.
I like that.
Yeah, you're not a cheerleader, but you're like hey, that Scott guy. He's pretty cool.
Well, it's like, okay, like you're not a hockey fan, but like in hockey, you got like plus minus rating. So like if you're on the ice and a goal goes in, you get a plus. If you're on the ice and a goal goes
doesn't go in,
you get scored on.
Okay.
You get a minus. And while it may not be your fault, you do have an aggregate. Like, okay, you're a plus 30 guy, so like you tend to be on the ice when goals are scored. You may not have been the guy that got the assist. You may not have been the guy that got the goal, but you're probably doing something.
I have a theory on this, by the way.
Oh, please.
Which is kind of a callback to the Ethan Burris episode. I thought about bringing it up then, but I forgot because we were talking about the Last Dance with the Bulls, right?
Yeah.
Robert Horry may be one of the top 10 best basketball players ever, and no one's ever heard of him.
Because of the team.
He's got 7 NBA championships. He may even have 8 from different teams, and he's a glue guy. He's a glue guy, and he comes in, he's always like a 6th or 7th man off the bench. And all the teams he went to ended up winning an NBA championship, Bulls being one of them.
Perfect example there.
He's got to have a high plus and low minus.
And like mad props for being in Chicago and bringing up the Bulls.
Scottie
Pippen too. He would have been a superstar.
Absolutely.
Had he not had Michael Jordan on his team.
Well, actually they ran that experiment because Michael Jordan left and Scottie went to other teams and they didn't do very well. But
they
Robert Horry,
they both got old.
But Robert Horry went to other teams and they won championships. I'm telling you, it all comes down to Robert Horry.
So is there a good way that they have of measuring like that kind of glue position in sports teams?
No.
To identify?
No. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. It's like one of the things I want to do. I do a bunch of network analysis work, and I got this idea, and I've ran it past several people, and they just essentially say I'm describing the energizer, but I'm not. It's something different. It's something. It may be only something you can figure out after the fact, which is no fucking help to anybody.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like my point. I always think about who are the people that are like electric, right? Who are the electric people that, you know, some people call it charisma or magnetism and all that kind of stuff. But it's like some people just make stuff happen.
Yeah.
Just by their existence. There's no tradecraft. not their behaviors. It's just their existence.
Yeah.
And I am so curious about that. And as far as I know, again, other people have come on the podcast and told me there's research about this, but I haven't seen it. So it's like bears. I've never seen one. I don't know if they exist.
It sounds like idealized influence and transformational leadership theory.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the best we have is other ratings of that.
Yeah.
Like leadership being a process of social influence.
Yeah. What is it? Can we distill it?
Yeah.
Can we bottle it?
It's a good question. It's one of those things that it when you see it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to break it down to certain behaviors, I think.
Yep.
It's the kind of personal brand that you bring to those behaviors, so to speak, that just kind of clicks.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is Scott is the Robert Ory of this podcast.
I mean, I'm offended, but also I'm pleased. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also the element.
That's the ultimate compliment, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know.
You just
win
win championships.
Better compliments.
For me, it is.
That's as high as Cole goes.
I just told you, I think he's the best basketball player in history. I'm saying you're the best basketball player in history.
Based on what you're saying, it sounds like a compliment. Yeah, I have no idea that was a non-sports fan.
No one knows who Robert Ory is, or very few people. He's not a legend like Michael Jordan or something.
Okay.
Well, you want to move on to something else? Something that I'm excited about. Nicholas, do you ever get excited about methodology? You see something you're damn, that's super cool.
Hell yeah! Talk to me about latent profile analysis.
Oh,
it's my favorite.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How do you use it?
So, did it for my dissertation. I used it at work in two different ways recently. So, first one is I built profiles of candidates who were attracted to the organization based on what their interests were, in terms of how certain interests cluster together.
Yeah.
And found basically certain people prioritize job security and work-life balance, kind of as a group, versus other individuals who prioritize the brand of the organization plus compensation plus working with coworkers who are exceptional at their job. And those interests really kind of clustered, and then they actually varied based on the kinds of jobs people applied for. So that was kind of an interesting finding. The second way was looking at burnout and engagement profiles. So measuring those separately.
Yeah.
The two constructs don't actually correlate that well. And so we're able to find, profiles of individuals who can be simultaneously engaged, but also showing signs of burnout. And then people who are low on both. And
so wild.
Two examples of that.
That's super great because the reasons why someone may be burned out could be totally different. And we tend to think about it from a linear perspective, you got more of this attribute than
But it's two-factor theory, satisfiers and dissatisfiers are different scales kind of thing. Burnout and engagement are different scales.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have gone down the rabbit hole on this psychometric network analysis.
Okay.
It's kind of a funny story. So, I met somebody in 2014 who wound up she was a grad student at the time. She wanted to be a professor at Georgia, and last year at SciOp, she was sitting around the bar. She's like, "Here, you need to talk to this other research." Name's Megan Lowry. We'll be on the pod. Doesn't matter. And she's like, "Well, yeah,
Megan. She's great.
She's great. She's great. She just published she's second author on this."
JAP?
JAP. There you go. Yeah. And essentially, you're treating individual survey items as nodes in a network to see the intercorrelations among them. Okay. And this particular article, which I don't know, do you have the title in front of you? What's it called?
I got the one that you sent.
Yeah, that's what it's
Architecture and relationships among cognition, mental health, and other human domains revealed by network analysis perspective.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, cognition, personality, mental health, all these sort of things, they're typically studied separately, but they're all linked in your same brain, right? So they got to be somewhat interconnected. You would expect them to have some interplay there. The only thing that we really think about from this perspective is openness to experience and cognitive ability. We know that those two things are correlated. But what we've actually lacked is a flexible methodology to study the interconnections across them. So they use this psychometric network analysis. I've also seen the literature called causal attitude analysis, is what Megan Lowry's JAP article is about, as well as this is called exploratory graph analysis. There's also an extension Bayesian network approach, which they all mean essentially the same thing. Yeah. You're treating
somebody had to get tenure by creating a new variant of it. I agree.
I think it's all going to correlate into the same thing. But essentially, you run a lasso regression. You get these partial correlations, and those are the links in between these items. and you can then run specific network analysis metrics on it. So centrality, community detection, all these sort of things. And they had this like massive database of responses to a variety of metrics related to cognition and substance abuse and personality, etc. And using this methodology, once again, you can do community detection. So kind of like your latent profile analysis, you understand like kind of clustering. And so they came up with 7 broad domains, which are mental health, pain, delayed discounting task, high cognitive functioning, low cognitive functioning, externalizing problems, and substance abuse issues. Interestingly, they came up with a high cognitive functioning and low cognitive functioning, which kind of flies in the face of like Spearman's G or like Gardner's multiple intelligences, right? It's somewhere in the middle there. Let's see, anything else there? Crystallized intelligence was the main connecting between this connector. Had the highest.
Oh, you are so excited!
I fucking love it, man. I fucking love it, and it makes sense because like this is central to all your experiences. Like that's what crystallized intelligence would be. And it also shows they have confirmatory results seen in clinical patients as far as substance abuse and personality disorders and this sort of thing.
Okay,
I'm so jazzed. Like the findings of this are great and everything, but like I think this is a fantastic new frontier that we haven't really used for survey research.
Can I ask a really dumb question?
I have a dumb question too. You go first.
Please bring it.
How different is this from like confirmatory factor analysis?
That was my question, except for exploratory factor analysis.
Yeah.
After you run a lasso regularization, you get rid of the variables that aren't really intercorrelated with stuff.
Yeah.
You got to reduce set. Great. You're not overfitting. But then you're looking at the interdependence between those clusters. In an EFA, you can also look at the factor intercorrelation as well, right? But how does a network graph differ from like latent variable?
It seems like it would show very similar findings. Like I would love to run the same data sets side by side and see what you would find with the EFA, CFA, and then this psychometric network analysis, whatever you call it.
So there are similarities, and it does kind of perform like a factor analysis where you do find these like communities and this sort of thing where you kind of see how the different items group together.
What's interesting is the results are different though than what you would expect with the EFA or CFA. So that's the curious part to me.
A bit, and like anything else, it's dependent upon like the variables that you put into the model.
Yeah.
So like you put different things in, like certain things are going to become more central than others. But that's sort of like the great thing that you apply the network analysis metrics to it on top of sort of just separating things out. You can see interrelationships between different variables that wouldn't necessarily pop out in a typical analysis, right? So imagine like an element of burnout may show up next to an element of personality, which you wouldn't necessarily study those together. You would think of it as a like hierarchical structure.
Okay.
But you can see that the individual elements would connect.
Well, I guess, again, the other side of it, wouldn't that doesn't make nomenological sense for those two things to be together necessarily. So couldn't that perhaps just be error? Like, couldn't it be like methodological error that the fact that that's happening?
Well, I mean, like error is inherent to everything,
Yeah.
right?
I think running the lasso as a pre-step prevents overfitting, which would minimize like spurious relationships like that, presumably.
By the way, first psychometric network analysis reference and first lasso reference on the podcast. So this is good stuff.
Technically, it's G lasso, which is I haven't quite wrapped my mind around exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
I mean, then we can start talking about ridge regression.
Electric net.
Yeah.
Elastic net.
Elastic net. Yeah.
Well, is this the point where we've officially gone off the rails?
I think we're pretty far down the route. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicholas, this was experimental to say the least.
It was definitely experimental. I enjoyed it though. This was good.
And for context, for those of you who are listening, because we probably cut this up by this point, we were in a room to do happy hour, and then the happy hour just got boisterously loud, so we moved to another room, but you can still kind of hear it in the background.
Still incredibly loud. But
we're at the TALREOS conference. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the heck out of it, Nicholas. Any parting words for Nicholas, Scott?
Oh, Nicholas, you're a mensch of the highest order.
A Canadian mensch.
A Canadian mensch.
A truffle mensch.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Let's see. Do you have any limericks or anything? You want to say?
Any limericks? Any Canadian limericks?
Are you a
poet?
Yes, one of my hidden talents.
Well, another one of your hidden talents. Aren't you a mixologist? How was your drink? Is it good?
Oh yeah. How's this rate?
It's okay.
No.
That is the worst criticism that can come out of a mixologist's mouth.
This is not a power distribution. Yeah.
It was my COVID hobby. Fortunately, unfortunately, is getting into making drinks. Since then, I've made a lot of. So I've got a couple of friends. We collaborate on making cocktails.
Yeah.
There's a place here in Chicago called the Aviary. They make these insane craft cocktails, and so there's a book they released. Every few months we get together and choose one cocktail from this book. It'll take us 2 to 3 days to prepare the ingredients for it.
Oh wow!
Like using an immersion circulator to infuse like nectarine into vermouth. Making popsicles made of like mezcal, watermelon juice, and barbecue bitters, all this sort of stuff. And then we'll host parties and have friends over and stuff.
You had a very different COVID than
I
This
mean,
is amazing, by the
We
way.
didn't host the parties during COVID, but we do now. But I developed a lot of that kind of like interest and skills and content making during that.
Like you're also like diamond cutting too, right?
Diamond cutting?
You mean like Diamond Cutter, like Diamond Dallas Page, like,
professional wrestling?
Yeah. Is that kind of Diamond Cutter?
No, not at all. So to pay for my undergraduate education, I worked as a diamond drill helper during the summers.
Diamond drill
helper, yeah. So if you think about the mining industry, you have prospecting as the first step. Like, hey, is there going to be something here? And then mining companies basically take the land, and then we do exploratory drilling to determine if there is an ore body there. And so if there is, then they actually set up a mine and they start mining. I worked for a company that would do exploratory drilling. We'd have a drill rig. We'd drill holes in the ground up to 1 kilometer, or like for the American listeners, like
Half a
0.6
mile?
miles.
One click.
Yeah. Into the earth at different orientations.
How many
And
knots was it going?
14 knots in trajectory.
Like you drinking their milkshake, as you talk about in.
I drink your milkshake.
Yeah, I drink your milkshake.
I don't get
There
the
Will
reference.
Be Blood.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it.
Famous movie.
They're drilling oil. They're going in sideways, like under people's land.
Oh, interesting. Okay, no, I didn't do anything like that.
So can we call you Drillbit Bremner from now on?
Yeah, sure, man. For sure. whatever floats your boat.
I feel like that would fly in the oil patch. I don't know. Anyway, that was stupid. All right, I'm going to quit talking now. All right. You've been listening to Directionally Correct.
Strong finish.
All right. We're going to keep going. We're going to power through this.
I'm waiting for that limerick.
What is the limerick?
This was a man from.
There once was a man from Toronto.
Okay, that's
All
fair.
right,
That's fair.
hold on. Isn't a limerick 2 rhymes, a non-rhyme, and then a rhyme?
I have no idea. Oh, yeah, I think that's a haiku, right?
No, haiku is
It's a number of
3 syllables,
I think.
5 syllables, 3 syllables, or something like that. A limerick, I think, is 2 rhymes, a non-rhyme, and then a rhyme again. I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is it like an Irish thing?
The only reason why I know that is because they do them on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is an NPR show.
That's right, they do.
Okay.
And so then they make the person guess what the last word is because it's supposed to rhyme with the earlier words. And it always throws people off because the line before doesn't rhyme.
That makes sense.
So, I once met a man from Canada.
We need
He
generative
went
AI.
all the way to
yeah,
Canada.
let's do a little generative AI.
Let's get
limerick.
ChatGPT to write us a
Yeah.
limerick.
Write me a
limerick about Canada.
About Canada, yeah.
Okay, in Canada, the land of the maple, where moose and beavers frolic and dabble, mountains tall and lakes so grand, vast wilderness, breathtaking land. Oh, Canada, your beauty is unparalleled.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one. That's a good one.
Oh, it's not even original?
They teach us that in
those
school.
plagiarists.
What the hell,
I'm
man?
just kidding. I've never heard that before.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to Directionally Correct.
You
Well
only get
played,
it here.
sir. Well, I think that's a good wrapping
Yeah,
point.
that's
So, Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us today. And you've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott and Nicholas Bremner. Thanks for joining us, Nicholas.
Thanks for having me.
As always, all opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
You've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott.